Let's turn to 2 Samuel chapter 10. Second Samuel chapter 10. So the last couple of lessons has shown us the kind of king that David is. Chapter 8 verse 15 said that David reigned over all Israel, and David executed judgment and justice unto all his people. So David is a good king. Chapter 9 detailed the kindness that he showed to an unworthy descendant of Saul and Jonathan's, Mephibosheth. David is not only a good king in what we would call the political or the governmental sense. He's compassionate to his people. He's loving. He cares. He's a good king. Now tonight we're going to see another example of that kindness, but we're also going to see what happens when that kindness is rejected. So let's look at that tonight in chapter 10. Tonight we're going to talk about ambassadors and Ammonites. Okay? Ambassadors and Ammonites. Chapter 10. All right, number one, David rejected. David rejected. Verse number 1 says that it came to pass after this that the king of the children of Ammon died, and Hanun his son reigned in his stead. Then said David, I will show kindness unto Hanun, the son of Nash, as his father showed kindness unto me. And David sent to comfort him by the hand of his servants for his father. And David's servants came into to the land of the children of Ammon. We're introduced tonight in this chapter of David hearing about the death of the king of Ammon. After hearing upon that, David wants to express his sympathy. He wants to express to the new king, who has just recently lost his father, he wants to express his heartfelt emotion, his compassion, his sympathy for what has just happened. So he prepares an embassage. He prepares a group of servants to go and to relay that message, and according to verse number 2, to comfort him, to be a comfort. Now that would be somewhat of a customary thing to do at a time like this, right? Now I don't know, so some of you of course are old enough to know that it would be like this, but maybe some of you kids didn't know this, that if our president were to die, in office, if our president were to die, it would be the biggest to-do in the world among our allies. There would be a state funeral. All of our closest allies would send their leaders. They would come, and they would be there to represent their countries and to express words of sympathy. That's what would happen. David does that. It's seen as a kind gesture. It's seen as a customary but kind gesture to those that may be around you, to give your expressions of sympathy. We do that to people, customarily. So with that as his motive, kindness in his heart, an attempt to comfort this one who's just lost his father, the king, David sends these ambassadors. But verse number 3 says that the princes of the children of Ammon said unto Hanun their lord, Thinkest thou that David doth honor thy father, that he hath sent comforters unto thee? You don't really think that, do you? You don't really think that he honors your father. Hath not David rather sent his servants unto thee to search the city and to spy it out and to overthrow it? These servants of the new king, when they hear of what David has proposed, they're like, come on, you can't be serious. You don't seriously believe him, do you? They go to the new king and they're like, no, these guys are spies. They're not here as a comfort. They're not here to honor the memory of your father. They're not here as friends. They're lying. They're spies. They've come to spy out our land. They're going to find our weaknesses. They're going to attack. They're going to overthrow us. They totally question David's motives here. They accuse him of false pretenses. They say, hey, man, these guys are spies. Now, I want to make a note there. And I hope you just take it to heart the way that it's intended. There may be times in life where you have the best of intentions. There will still be some people that think you're a fake, right? There's just some people that are like that. You can't please everyone. You can't make yourself and your intentions known well enough. David here, out of the goodness and kindness of his heart, out of the compassion for a son who's just lost his father, sends a group of ambassadors to go and to represent him and to be a help and a comfort. It's good to know that, you know what, hey, somebody thought well of Dad, or, he had showed kindness to me, so I want to show kindness to him. And these men say, I can't believe you're serious. I can't believe you're seriously considering this. These guys are liars. They're spies. It happens, okay? Don't let it make you hard and crusty. Don't let it spoil your good intentions, okay? Somebody may think you're a fake. Somebody may think ill of you, but don't worry about that. We know David's intentions are true and his motives are pure, but he's still falsely accused. Now let's look at verse number 4. Wherefore, Hanun took David's servants and shaved off the one half of their beards and cut off their garments in the middle, even to their buttocks, and sent them away. Hanun listened to his servants. And I want you to see how they treated David's ambassadors. This was a disgraceful insult. Now, we're not necessarily, because of our culture in the West and because of, the culture that we've all grown up in, lived in our entire life, we may not see how insulting these actions are. But they would have been incredibly insulting. The beard was held in much high regard, high estimation in the East. And to shave off half of their beards and send them home would have made them a subject of scorn, of ridicule. It would have been humiliating. It would have been embarrassing. And if that's not enough, it says there in verse number 4 that they cut off half their garments, cut off their garments down to the middle. Again, humiliating, exposing a portion of their nakedness. You can only imagine what it's like to have a garment that's long enough to cover one portion, right? And if you pull it down just a little bit in the front to cover your circumcision, then you expose yourself on the backside. But if you pull it down a little bit on the backside to cover the nakedness of your rear, you expose the front side. It would just have been humiliating and degrading for these men to have this treatment put upon them and then to have them sent home. Now, this is a good spot to stop for just a minute and talk about ambassadors and what an ambassador is. Ambassadors are people or groups of people, as it was in this case, someone who takes a message for another, a king or a country, or someone who represents, another king or a country. We still, to this day, we have ambassadors. We, as the United States, we have ambassadors that go to other nations. And the idea behind that is that it doesn't always work out this way, but in a cordial society, in proper society, you would like to maintain as good a relations as you can with the other nations of this world. So we send ambassadors to them, and they represent us, and then they'll send ambassadors here and represent their country. Now, an ambassador only carries as much authority and can only share what he has authority to share, right? If you are sent as a representative of a country, if you are sent as an ambassador, that's not fair game to just do what you want to do, say what you want to say. You have to represent your king, your country, your president in their message, in their goals, in their charters, in their outlines. Our ambassadors do not have the authority to go to other countries and say, yeah, bomb whoever you want to. It'd be fine. We're okay with it. You can't do that, right? That's not our position as a country. That's not the position of our government. So an ambassador can't just go and say that kind of thing. You have to work within the authority that you are given. You can't just say whatever you want to do whatever you want to do. You speak for another. You know, the Bible says that we're ambassadors. Paul considered himself to be an ambassador of the Lord Jesus Christ. Do you know why we're really, really particular about only preaching what's in the Bible? Because if we're ambassadors, that's the only thing that we have authority to say. We have to proclaim the word of the one that sent us, right? That's where our authority stops and ends. The moment that an ambassador starts to speak for himself, he's out of line. The moment that I get in the pulpit and start speaking for myself and proclaiming my own ideas, I would be out of line. So an ambassador takes a message or represents another. An ambassador can only share what authority he has. But I'll also say this on the reverse side of that. How you treat an ambassador is recognized as how you treat those that sent them. Now we see that in the scriptures. I'm thinking about the parable in Luke chapter 20 where the one has a vineyard that he's made, and he puts a husbandman there, and then later on down the road he sends servants to the husbandman, and he's abusive to them. And then he sends more, and he's abusive to them. And then finally, the one that gave the vineyard says, okay, I guess nothing else, I'll send my son. And they, abuse him, and they actually kill him. And the question is at the end of that parable, so what do you think the guy that's going to do to the husbandman, right? Well, if you've rejected the one that has been sent, that is a rejection of the one that sent him, right? And if you reject David's ambassadors, not only is it an insult to them, it's an insult to David. It is an insult to King David to send these men home half shaven and half naked. It would have been humiliating for them and an insult to King David. I want you to see how big a deal that would be, because this is going to lay the foundation for why chapter 11 starts out the way that it does and why it's a pretty big deal. Okay, this is a big deal. David has been insulted and his men have been humiliated. So verse 5, when they told it to David, he sent to meet them because the men were greatly ashamed. And the king said, tarry at Jericho until your beards be grown and then return. When David finds out, he hurries to see them. They were indeed humiliated. It's good to see that David is compassionate, right? He doesn't further embarrass them. He actually protects their dignity. He allows them to wait there before, returning back home. Have you ever wondered why men flock to David? This is a good example of it right here, right? David cared for his men. He cared that they were humiliated and embarrassed and would not suffer them any further shame. He wouldn't even send them home yet until they could recover their dignity and return home with at least a little bit of honor. Stuff like this helps if you wonder why David is so popular. Verse number 6, and when the children of Ammon saw that they stank before David, the children of Ammon sent and hired the Syrians of Beth-rehob and the Syrians of Zobah, 20,000 footmen, and of King Maacah 1,000 men, and of Ishtob 12,000 men. Now they knew what they had done. The Ammonites knew what they had done. It is not that David rejected the Ammonites. They had made themselves repulsive, vulgar, and according to the word here in verse number 6, they stank before David. When they realized what they had done, they realized they had bit off more than they could chew, so they went and got help. It says here that they hired the Syrians. If you turn over sometime and read the parallel passage to this in 1 Chronicles chapter 19, you learn that they paid something like 1,000 talents of silver to get help from the Syrians. They realized, for lack of a better term in our vernacular, I done messed up. Like, this is big. Like, they know they've insulted David and insulted his men. And when David finds out, we're in trouble. And so they immediately try to go and hire some help. They've offended David, and now they're going to prepare for war. Number 2, David's response. David's response. Verse number 7, When David heard of it, he sent Joab and all the host of the mighty men. So when David hears this, he gets his captain and he assembles this band that's called the mighty men. This is one of the first references we have of that phrase. You've probably heard of that, the mighty men, David's mighty men. Read 2 Samuel 23, maybe sometime in preparation of, it'll be a handful of months probably before we get there at our pace, even if we cover a chapter a week. It's going to be a little bit. But read about David's mighty men and some of those that had surrounded him. Verse number 8, the children of Ammon came out and put the battle in array at the entering in of the gate, and the Syrians of Zobah and of Rehab and Eshtab and Maacah, they were by themselves in the field. When Joab saw that the front of the battle was against him before and behind, and he chose of all the choice men of Israel and put them in array against the Syrians, and the rest of the people he delivered to the hand of Abishai, his brother, that he might put them in array against the children of Ammon. So Joab, the captain here, he sees how this is, how the enemy assembles themselves. He sees how this battle's going to shape up. Part of them, part of his men he puts at the gate or near the gate to fight off Ammon, and the other part he takes toward the field to fight off the Syrians. So we know it's going to have to be a split battle, right? A fight on two different sides. That's not a lot of men to fight a two-front battle, and largely outnumbered. But if you read verse number 11, he seems to only have one plan, and that's to attack. Verse 11, and he said, if the Syrians be too strong for me, then thou shalt help me. But if the children of Ammon be too strong for thee, then I will come and help thee. If you need help, we'll come. If we need help, y'all come to us. But you'll notice there, he doesn't have a backup plan. He's not leaving himself a way to escape if it doesn't work. It's you attack yours, and we'll attack ours. And keep an eye out for each other and help each other if we need it. But we're in this thing. And there's no, hey, we're outnumbered. Maybe we should rethink this. Maybe we should retreat and go get the rest of the army, and see if we can get more help. No, it's us. It's us against them. Let's divide up. You go that way. I'm going this way. If we need help, let's help each other. We're going to fight. We're going to war here. It says in verse 12, be of good courage, and let us play the men for our people and for the cities of our God, and the Lord do that which seemeth him good. Joab is many things. But here he's as courageous and patriotic as ever, loyal to David and ready to fight against the enemies of Israel. Right? Three particular things that he mentions there. First, be of good courage. Right? Courage is that which comes, certainly when it's needed. And courage is not the absence of problems. Courage is not the absence of difficulty. It's the attitude that you have in those things, right? To stand up, to be people of courage. He says, secondly, that remember, let us play the men for our people and for the cities of our God. Remember who we're fighting for. If they get by us and they get ready to attack Israel, he tells his brother, this is for our people. This is for our cities. And then he says at the end of verse number 12, the Lord do that which seemeth him good. What a novel approach, right? Prepare for battle to the best of your ability. Show courage and put forth a strong effort. And then know that the outcome is in the Lord's hands. I mean, that's about as great an approach to life as you can possibly have. War, sure, but even life. Do your best. Prepare your best, right? And give it your best shot. Show courage. Try. Work hard. And then know that it's in the Lord's hands. When you've done all that you can do and all that you know to do, and you've put forth every effort and showed courage and faith and tried as hard as you can, trust that it's in the Lord's hands. And the Lord do, as he says there in verse 12, the Lord do that which seemeth him good. Well, verse number 13 says that Joab drew nigh and the people that were with him unto the battle against the Syrians, and they fled before him. Like, it doesn't seem like it takes an incredibly long amount of time that Joab shows this great courage, divides up the men, and he takes his band, and he's going to head off toward the Syrians in the field, and they run. They flee. And then verse 14, when the children of Ammon saw also that the Syrians were fled, then fled they also before Abishai and entered into the city. Like, when Ammon said, oh great, money well spent, right? Here are the guys that we hired to come and help us, and they've left. They leave. They run. They flee away from the battle as well. This is just a great, it's not a complete victory, but it's obviously a victory, right? They've put them on the run. They have really, through courage, taken a small band compared to the 30-something thousand that came of this Ammonite-Syrian coalition, and they've put them on the run. Now, notice what it says here at the end of verse 14, and lock this away in your memory for a bit. So when the children of Ammon saw that the Syrians were fled, then fled they also before Abishai and entered into the city. They went back to the city they came from. So Joab returned from the children of Ammon and came to Jerusalem. Joab doesn't pursue him any further. In fact, you're going to learn a phrase in the next chapter that this was not the right time to do that, right? There was what was considered a time of war. This was not the time of year that it would be wise to start the siege of a city. Okay, let's put it that way in those terms. So Joab, once they retreat and get back to their city, this is not really the time of year to be trying to siege a city. So Joab takes his and returns back to Jerusalem. But lock that away in your memory bank. Verse 15, and when the Syrians saw that they were smitten before Israel, they gathered themselves together. And Hadarezer sent and brought out the Syrians that were beyond the river. And they came to Helam, and Shobach, the captain of the host of Hadarezer, went before them. So not content really with the whooping that they just got, the Syrians, no help from the Ammonites, they've returned to their city, they're holed up in their city. The Syrians go back across the river Euphrates, and they get more help. They go and they try to get more of their countrymen, right? Okay, this band of mighty men, we maybe were ill prepared, right? 30-some thousand plus that they came with, whatever. Let's go get reinforcements. Let's go and get more. And that's what they do here in this passage. Well, verse 17, when it was told David, he gathered all Israel together. When the Syrians come with their full strength, David now takes not just his band of mighty men, but David comes and he gathers all Israel together and passed over Jordan and came to Helam. And the Syrians set themselves in array against David and fought with him. You get the picture? David's in this battle, hot and heavy with them. And the Syrians fled before Israel, and David slew the men of 700 chariots of the Syrians and 40,000 horsemen, and smote Shobach, the captain of their host, who died there. And when all the kings that were servants to Hadarezer saw that they were smitten before Israel, they made peace with Israel and served them. So the Syrians feared to help the children of Ammon anymore. Now, there's no other way to describe this than a complete victory over the Syrians. And you look at the language, these Syrians were devastated, right? They lost, according to just that verse, the men of 700 chariots, 40,000 horsemen. I mean, you were talking, 32,000 they came with before, and that wasn't enough. They went back and got more, and they still get annihilated in this battle. And there at verse number 19, they realize eventually that we just better cut our losses and make peace. And chalk this up to experience that we should have never gotten in an alliance with the Ammonites. And obedient Israel had these promises from God. In Deuteronomy chapter 28, The blessings and the cursings, right? Deuteronomy 28, verse 7, the Lord shall cause thine enemies that rise up against thee to be smitten before thy face. They shall come out against thee one way and flee before thee 7 ways. And that's exactly what you're seeing here, right? This first time they come against him, they all flee. The Ammonites flee. The Syrians flee. They go and they get more help. And God gives Israel through David a great, great victory in this passage. So much so that they realized we should have never been in alliance with them. We would be better off surrendering, making peace, and making ourselves the servants of Israel. And those Ammonites, we ain't never helping them again. So the Syrians feared to help the children of Ammon anymore. You never know what courage could spur, right? Joab could have looked at this situation and been afraid. And I don't know that Joab knew exactly how this would play out. Joab left open the possibility, hey, if they're stronger than you, holler and we'll come to help you. Or if my side's stronger than us, y'all come over and help us. It's not that Joab didn't think we're outnumbered and, this could be a battle. We could struggle here. But he said, courage. Let's play the men. Let's do our part. Let's show courage for our people and for our cities and put it in the hands of the Lord and let the Lord do what seemeth good to him. And when they acted in courage, God gave them a great victory. They totally annihilated the Syrians. They put the Ammonites so far on the run that they holed up in their city. What a great chapter, right? Of courage, of great victory. David and his men had been humiliated and insulted, but they got the last laugh, right? Because they're going to get the victory. Now I'm going to close tonight the same way that we'll probably have to open next week. Number 3, David's regretful course. Okay? David's regretful course. Having seen all that we just saw in chapter 10, what's the one question that's left unanswered? What's the one question that's left unanswered? It's this. What do we do about those Ammonites? They're the ones that started this thing, aren't they? David sent his ambassadors to comfort the king of Ammon. They insulted David's men. They humiliated and embarrassed them, insulted David and sent them back. They started a war. They went and got help. They bought reinforcements from another country. Now, the last time, all we read about the Ammonites is that they were put on the run, went back to their city and holed up there. But Joab didn't pursue them any further. He returned to Jerusalem. Now, why did he do that? Well, if you read chapter 11, verse number 1, it says that it came to pass after the year was expired, at the time when kings go forth to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel. Now, where did he send them? Well, according to verse 1, they destroyed the children of Ammon and besieged Rabbah. Now, you put chapter 10 with this first verse of chapter 11, and you get the explanation that I was kind of giving there. When Joab put the Ammonites on the run before and they went back home, it does look like it wasn't the time of year that you would consider wise to besiege another city. Does that mean, it's winter, it's not really the good time of year to get supplies to a certain location or to try to besiege a city? Okay. But once that season has passed, and now it is time, here's the question, what are we going to do about Ammon? Ammon has to answer for the events of chapter 10. Ammon started a war with Israel. They hired reinforcements. They brought Israel and the Syrians into war. They humiliated David's ambassadors and insulted him. And you and I can see it as bright as day. David should be right there ready to defend his honor and the honor of his people, shouldn't he? That's what makes chapter 11 so weird in how it starts. Because chapter 11, verse 1 says, "But David tarried still at Jerusalem." And we've talked about chapter 11, and we'll get into it in a little bit more detail, and Brother John's preached through it here also just recently in covering Psalm number 51. He said David's first mistake was that he was not with his men. David did not go to war. There's more to it than that. David should have absolutely been out there against these Ammonites. And when you put all the events and the details of chapter 10 together, you understand the why. These Ammonites had rejected his generous offer of kindness. His ambassadors, not just that they rejected him, they humiliated David's ambassadors. Cut off half their beards, cut off their garments, humiliated them in a procession to go back home, started a war that David had no intention of starting, brought the Syrians into it, paid the Syrians to join them in war. And now when chapter 11 opens, and it is the time of year to go and set a siege and to take the vengeance upon Ammon for what they had done, David should be right there. But he doesn't go. David stays home. And that decision begins a sequence of events that become the biggest mistakes that David ever makes. And chapter 11 does not begin with a huge rebellion against God. It doesn't begin with this huge act of disobedience. It starts with David, as we've said before, as it's been preached, David's not where he's supposed to be. And when you understand chapter 10, you understand, why isn't David there? If anything, through the insults and through the war that they just tried to start, David's not afraid of war. He just led a war against these Syrians in the last couple of verses. Why did David stay home? That doesn't make any sense. He should have been out there. Yeah, he should. Because of who the war was going to be against. Because of all that Ammon had done in chapter number 10, it's all the more perplexing. Why did David stay home? Why did David tarry at Jerusalem? And doing so was like the first domino falling, right? Because there's a great error, multiple errors in chapter number 11. Chapter 10 is full of great stories of courage and patriotism and heroism, and David's right there at the forefront of all of it, okay? Joab is right there at the forefront of all of it. God's blessing upon Israel, upon their enemies and those that had attacked them and those that had provoked them and those that had insulted them. And then chapter 11 opens up and it's time to go and address the issue with Ammon. And David stays home. You know, sometimes as we get away, it's not always built on huge acts of rebellion. It's often little things. It's often being neglectful that start a series of bigger things. Chapter 11 is about the worst things that we can read about David. And thus far, the Bible has painted us a picture of David that is incredibly incredibly awesome, right? He loves his people. He's insulted when they are humiliated. He wants to defend them, and he'll go to war with Israel's enemies. And he's a kind and compassionate to people. He's sympathetic to his neighboring kings that have just lost their father. He's sympathetic to the crippled grandson of the former king of Israel that he doesn't have to be. David is a good king in so many ways. And this misjudgment, this neglect of going and doing what he really should do, starts the events of chapter 11. So when you've read that before, and like I said, we'll get into chapter 11 some, and maybe you've passed over that, right? That, well, David tarried at Jerusalem, it was the time that kings should go forth to battle. There's more to it than that, because you know now what the Ammonites have done. And it really should be perplexing to us. Why in the world would David stay home after all that the Ammonites have done? But he does, and it's going to get him in quite a bit of trouble. So let's try to focus and remember. Be courageous, be faithful, be heroic, all of those great things, but don't be neglectful. Let's keep in mind to do on the regular what we should do. Be where we're supposed to be. Be faithful in all of the things that we're supposed to be faithful to. Okay?